Excited to have you guys here and join us for the first official advance call of 2026. You know, the year's already started out pretty wild. You know, there's been some interesting stuff happen with rates. And so we've got some cool stuff to cover in this advance call. Now, most of you guys came from the basics call. If you have not watched the basics call, make sure to touch base with your rep or, you know, reach out to us, support@PalmAgent.com, and we can get you connected with a recording of that basics call. Also, you know, last month we did a really good advanced call as well. There's 4 calculators that are extremely relevant for today's market, you know, 2 for buyers, 2 for sellers. And there's some really cool stuff in that call as well. So again, reach out to your rep, see if you can get a recording of last month's advance call, or you can reach out to us at support@palmagent.com. But today I've got some really cool stuff to cover with you guys. We just pushed out an update to the app that introduced a nice new feature that I'll be showing off to you. Very cool feature for today's market. In fact, for today's market, one thing that we're seeing is that, you know, a lot of these buyers still dragging their feet a little bit, you know, waiting for even lower rates. For a second there, rates dipped below 6%. So they got into the 5s. Everybody got excited for a day. But a lot of these buyers are holding off still. But you know, we've got some really cool content in the app to help you guys change that. And so today I want to talk about a few calculators that you can use with buyers, those hesitant buyers, to get them thinking about buying and show them some really cool things to chew on in that decision to buy, and how now could be a really great time for them to buy. Valerie is asking if she should watch the basics to understand this advanced call. No, you know, we've got 28 different calculators in the app. You know, the basics call, we cover the buyer and the seller for helping you generate the buyer estimate when you're house shopping with buyers. The seller tab for generating your net sheet for your listing appointments. But today we'll be talking about some of the other calculators. Like I said, we've got 28 calculators in total available here to you. So a lot of additional tools. I urge you to, you know, swing back around and watch that basics call. But, you know, joining us today isn't dependent on you watching that basics call. You'll still pick up some really valuable stuff, and you can follow up with us or your rep to get access to that basics recording. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. Now, again, remember that last time we talked about the 4 calculators that are extremely relevant. You know, if you're talking with buyers, 2 calculators, very relevant for today's market and the market dynamics that we're seeing. Buy now or buy later, and the buy down calculator. Both of these really awesome tools when you're working with a buyer to get them to think about buying now. You know, a lot of these buyers, they're thinking about waiting just a little bit longer, time in the market perfectly. But the problem is that all the other buyers are trying to do that as well. And so if you try to do that, you know, you're going to end up in a market that has more buyer competition. You know, you might have to bid a little bit for the home that you want. Right now, though, we're still in an interesting market. There's still opportunity for our buyers where, you know, we've got ability to get concessions from those sellers to use for a buy down. You know, there's opportunity right now to buy and get the home for the right price. And then when lower rates come later in the year, possibly refinance down. A lot of these lenders offer these rate redo programs as well. So there's opportunity right now for buyers while there's less competition to really get the home that they want for a good price. And so both of those calculators really will help you in those conversations with your buyers. I'll show you some additional tools for those buyers though today. Now, again, the other side of this transaction, 2 amazing tools for you guys to know about that, again, we talked about on our last month's advanced call, the holding cost calculator, and then our newest calculator, that true value analysis calculator. In fact, if there's still time at the end of our call today, I'm going to go over that true value analysis calculator with you. It's so relevant. It's so timely. If you're having listing appointments and pricing conversations with sellers, I want you to know about this calculator. And it sounds like in the comments, we have at least one person that didn't join us last time. And so I'm going to make sure that at least she knows about this true value analysis calculator. But I want all of you guys to know about that, because it is a power tool for you to use in that pricing conversation with the seller. But, that was last month, the December advance call, which again, still relevant content. But today I want to talk about some additional tools that you guys can use with buyers. In fact, the first one I'll start with is one of our longtime favorite calculators in here. A lot of you might know it. A lot of you might have played with it already, but we added a really cool feature to it. And what I'm talking about is the monthly affordability calculator, you guys. This is such a powerful tool for using in a conversation with a buyer, a potential buyer. I'd argue it's the first step in a conversation with a buyer, asking them how much they're comfortable spending monthly. Or if I've got a renter, hey, how much are you renting for? Let me show you how much home you could get if that rent payment were a mortgage payment instead. But being able to start the conversation off with a buyer, asking them how much they're comfortable spending a month, it's such a powerful way to start a conversation off with a buyer and really cater that meeting to that buyer and what they're comfortable with. We all live in that monthly payment, and that's the number that you're able to play with this monthly affordability calculator. And so I'm going to go ahead and dive into it because, again, cool new feature added. So I'm going to open up our monthly affordability calculator here. And, this calculator is really simple for us. All we need to do is plug in a desired payment. And when we talk about a desired payment here at PalmAgent, we're talking all inclusive. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's what it says PITI for, because we're doing an all-inclusive payment here. When a buyer says that they want to spend $3,500 a month, they're not saying $3,500 plus taxes and insurance. They're thinking an all-inclusive number. And so that's what we do here with this monthly affordability calculator. We're able to plug in that all-in monthly payment. How much are you comfortable spending a month? Let me show you how much home that would equate to. And so I'll go ahead and plug it in. I'll just say, and forgive me in advance, anybody who's joining us from California. I know you guys probably want me to put 6,000 or 7,000 a month here. But for the rest of the nation, and because we're here in Texas, I'm going to just do something more conservative. I'll do a $3,500 a month payment. Maybe that's what they're renting for. That's how much they're comfortable spending. And so I plug in $3,500, and really, that's all you need to do, you guys. Thanks to these defaults that we have loaded in here, all you have to do is plug in that desired payment, and you'll see that compute button is now blue. That's all it takes. Now, I do want to point out and talk about a few of these inputs real quick. Some of them just to brag about, for example, our interest rate. We update that every single day for you guys. We use Mortgage News daily, and we pull a fresh rate based on the national average every single day. And so that rate that we've defaulted in there, it's going to be live for you. You can, of course, adjust it. Maybe that buyer has spoken with the lender, and they've got a rate that they've been approved for. You can adjust that rate. But again, the one that we've defaulted in here is going to be based on the national average from the previous day. So very, very relevant rate number there. The rest of these, you could, of course, adjust the taxes based on the area that your account is associated with. But really what I want to show you, just so you know about it, is in the top right corner, there's a plus bring to close. This section is something that's really cool. I'm not going to use it in this calculation personally, but I do want to show it to you. If you press that, it's going to add an input field here, you guys. This monthly affordability calculator by default is saying, hey, how much are you comfortable spending monthly? But when we add that input field here for the bring to close amount, this calculator turns into how much are you comfortable spending monthly? And how much total do you have to bring to the closing table? And if you plug in that bring to close amount, maybe they've got $125,000 after they sell their house that they'll be able to bring to the closing table. You type in that all-in number, not just down payment, but down payment and closing costs here. And it'll spit out an exact number for you, an exact home price that they should be looking at. I'm going to go ahead and exclude that though, and I'm just going to use the monthly affordability calculator by default. Just plug in a monthly payment, hit compute down there at the bottom, and boom, I've got the number here. This buyer should be looking in that 405, 410 price range. In fact, if they're willing to put 10% down, the exact number should be 408. That's roughly what kind of home they could get with a $3,500 monthly payment at today's interest rate of 6%. Now, you'll notice that there is a slider here, so we can adjust this. Maybe they're going to try to put more down. if you could put 20% down, 3,500 a month is going to get you a little bit more. You could possibly buy a house in that 460 price range, or, maybe they're looking at something less, 5% down. Of course, that's going to give us something more along the 387. So how much are you trying to put down, Mr. Buyer, is the question that this becomes after we ask them how much they're comfortable spending monthly. So a really cool calculator here. And of course, as with all of our additional calculators, we do have that blue bar at the top that gives additional screens that you could swipe over to. Here, if we swipe over, it's going to give us a breakdown of that monthly payment and that bring to close amount. And so we have both of those here, more details on this scenario that we ran for our buyer on how much they're comfortable spending monthly. Now, again, this is a great calculator. If you've got a buyer consult set up, this is the first calculator that you'll use with a buyer just to gauge what price we should be looking at based on how much they're comfortable spending monthly. But we added a new feature to this, you guys. And I don't know if you guys have heard anything about the 50-year mortgage. It's something that we saw a lot of rumblings about. And so we created a calculation for it. But it's really interesting when you think about that 50-year, the potential 50-year mortgage that, the president mentioned. It's really interesting because, at first, the topic is really polarizing. We saw it online, a lot of people arguing about how much interest you pay to the banks with a 50-year mortgage if they do introduce a 50-year mortgage. But, the same could be said when you compare a 15-year to a 30-year and how much interest you're paying to the banks. So by that logic, we shouldn't go with a 30-year, we should go with a 15-year. And by that same logic, we shouldn't go with a 15-year, we should just pay all cash for the home. But really, we can't all just pay all cash for the home. We get these loan products based on what works for us, what makes that monthly payment comfortable for us. And it really gets interesting when you think about how long on average homeowners stay on their home. It ranges from 8 to 12 years, of course, skewing a little bit longer because of the rate lock. But if I'm going to only be living in the house for 10 years, it's really interesting to look at a 30-year, a 50-year, and a 15-year when we think about that in our mind of only living in the house for 10 years. How do the numbers look when we consider just a 10-year timeline? Does the 50-year make sense? Is it comparable to a 30-year? And so we introduced a really cool feature here to help you guys in those conversations if you're talking with buyers about a 50-year. What's really interesting, you can go to your monthly affordability calculator, you can run a scenario. So I've got my 10% down, $3,500 a month. That's how much I'm comfortable spending. And it's getting me a 408, 410 price range that I could be looking at. Well, if we shake this device, so I shake my device, I hold it in front of me and I shake it back and forth, it creates our hidden feature. And, we've got these built into all the different calculators. I urge you guys to check them out on your other calculators. But look what we've changed this to here. This is the recent update that we pushed out. If you're not seeing the same on your app, you need to go to the App Store and update your app. This is something that we pushed live, I believe, at the end of last week. So a very fresh new feature here. But look at the top of this screen. It's actually showing us our buying power for $3,500 a month at all three loan types, a 15-year, a 30-year, and if it holds the same interest rate, what would a 50-year look like? And this is just really interesting because look at that 30-year. I'm limited at a 408 price range. But with a 50-year loan, if that becomes, something that's actually offered, it ups my buying power there. I could be looking at a home in a whole new neighborhood here. I might have maxed out all the listings on Zillow at that 408, 410 price range. Now this is giving me new homes to look at. And it's really interesting when you think about that way, because, if we're talking about this potential 50-year, if we think about how much a homeowner is comfortable spending or a buyer is comfortable spending monthly, this becomes a really interesting conversation because now that 50-year unlocks more buying power for them. Don asked to, what did I select in the calculator to get this screen? I'm going to go ahead and X out of it. This is one of our hidden features. So when you're on your result screen on any of the calculators, you'll hold your device in front of you, and you'll just shake it back and forth. You know, that's how you'll unlock that hidden feature. Now I'm going to X out of that. For those of you who use this software on your laptop or desktop, in the top right corner, you'll see a little phone rotating icon. That's what you'll want to look for on a laptop or a desktop, is that rotating. And in fact, the reason it's that phone rotating icon is because on your phone, you can shake it or you can rotate it to the left or right and rotate it back. Now, the final thing I'll say about that is that sometimes people do have their screen rotation lock on. You know, up here in my actions panel on my iOS device, there's this little lock. That is your phone rotation lock. So if it's red, your phone isn't recognizing it being shaked or rotated. And so that'll need to be turned off. So I do want to point that out for you. Not a problem, Don. Great question. In fact, anybody who has questions, type them in the chat section. I've got somebody here supporting, and I also am looking up to it periodically, and we'll try to answer your questions as they come up. But let's go back to our hidden feature here. I'll shake my device. So not only does it show us at the top that this potential 50-year could up our buyers' buying power. You know, they could actually be looking in a new neighborhood trying to find a home if this 50-year were to become an actual thing. But if we think about how the numbers look over time, it's really interesting because, one, I'm able to get more home. So if I went with that 50-year, now I could get a 442 home. Well, 3.5% appreciation on a 442 home is different than 3.5% appreciation on a 410 home. And so that makes it really interesting. And so if we look at down here, we can scroll and we can talk about some of this important stuff here. First, the appreciation percentage. Being able to talk about with our buyer, okay, what do you think is going to happen with appreciation? We've got it defaulted to 3%, but you can notice that we actually loaded in expert opinions here. When I press that, it's going to show from the experts what they're expecting of appreciation. And so we can really have that conversation with our buyer and talk about, hey, what do you think is going to happen with appreciation? But, you know, here's what the experts are saying. Do you want me to slide this and adjust? Do you want to talk about less appreciation? Maybe we should talk about 2% appreciation, more conservative year. Or, you know, do you think this year is going to be a rocket ship year where we're looking at more like 5%? Again, we could also stick with that 3% average that we've loaded in there, but it's really cool to be able to talk about appreciation, what that buyer expects of appreciation, and kind of look at the numbers that way. But I'll collapse this expert opinion because I want to talk about the equity stance portion that we've put down at the bottom. We actually let you look at what your equity stance would be over time. You know, 5 years, 8.4 years, the national average, 10 years, 15 years. What do the equity stance look like on these three different scenarios and different price points here? And the 5-year equity, you know, it's really interesting. Look at those numbers. You know, the 50-year and 30-year are a lot closer than you would think. When you think about where your equity would be after 5 years, it's not that far off. And then, of course, we could expand the other ones too. We could look at the 8.5-year national average there. Again, not as far off as you would think. We're talking, you know, 19 grand here, 18 grand really. This is a really interesting way to look at, hey, over almost 10 years. In fact, let's look at the 10 years. Over 10 years, you really are only going to have like 20 grand more equity going with that 30-year. You know, and this again is where the numbers just get interesting. It helps you guys have a conversation with that buyer. And if you've got these buyers who are being a little hesitant, they're thinking about waiting, they're trying to time the market perfectly, they probably have heard something about this 50-year potential loan option that might be coming out or that's being talked about. And this is an interesting way for you to be an expert in that conversation and just look at the numbers. And let's say that 50-year never happens. This is still a way for you to talk about that 50 and 30. You know, this is a way for you to offer expert insight and be that guiding force for that buyer that you're working with. So really cool feature here that we added. I see that we have a question that was being answered here. Awesome. It looks like Chris was able to answer that. Okay. So Deborah, it looks like You're using an older version of the app, so you'll need to go to the App Store and update your app. Deborah is saying, if any of you guys are seeing when you shake that device on the monthly affordability calculator and it just shows you, if rates go up, how much buying power you're losing, that is the old version of the app. You got to go to the App Store and update your app. No problem, Deborah. All right, so that is the first feature I wanted to talk about with you guys in regards to getting some of these buyers thinking about buying right now. It's such an important topic of discussion. We got a lot of these buyers that are being a little hesitant. They're trying to time the market perfectly. This is a cool tool for you to use on them, the monthly affordability calculator. So definitely a really cool one. Another one I want to throw at you guys today, which is a little unconventional. It's an older calculator of ours, but still a very popular one, is the extra payment. Extra payment is such a cool conversation for you guys to have with buyers, especially after closing. In fact, I'll give you a tactic for using this calculator at the closing table to give that final, cherry on top on that good experience that you provided to that buyer. But our extra payment calculator essentially lets you see what, putting just a little bit more towards principal each month, how much time it's going to shave off your loan and how much you'll save in interest. And so very, very important conversations for us to have with our buyers who are conscious of these things. Some of these buyers, they care about how much interest they're paying. That's why they're waiting for a lower rate so that they can pay less in interest. Well, the extra payment, whether you're paying your payment bi-weekly or, you're paying a little bit extra towards that principal each month, it can really do a lot of damage in that interest that you're paying. And so this is a really cool calculator. Again, maybe a little bit later in that conversation with the buyer. Like I said earlier, great tactic for using it is at the closing table to give that last little gift to them. But I want to go ahead and show it to you just so that you know it's in here. Because again, it's all about how can we be the expert for our client? And I want to help you guys be experts for your buyers. Right now in today's market, there's some opportunity for these buyers. And if we can be good buyer's agents, it can do a lot of damage. Sometimes even working with a seller, we've got to get them okay with buying in today's market for them to become a seller. So being able to have conversations about buying right now and getting some energy behind buying right now can actually help you secure more listings as well. All right, so with this extra payment calculator, really cool way, again, to see how much time you're shaving off your loan, how much you're cutting down your interest costs just by paying a little bit more towards principal each month. And so here you'll plug in a price point. I'll do that 410 price point that pulled up earlier. And that's really all we need to do. We've got some defaults in here. Now it's got defaulted amount for that extra payment at $120, which isn't that bad. But again, you can change that. Maybe we want it to be a more round number. Let's just talk about $100 more a month. And we can adjust these numbers, all the rest of the numbers as well. But let's just see what $100 more a month does to our interest costs. If I hit compute, it's going to run a scenario here that's going to show me I'm actually going to save $55,000 in interest on this home. And that's such a powerful number for our buyer to see. A lot of times the buyers don't even realize how much they're paying in interest on that home. But we're talking about a 410 home price here. That buyer seeing that they're saving $55,000 in interest on that 410 home over the life of the loan, that number is really big and strong in terms of what that buyer sees. This is what, 10%, a little bit less or a little bit more than 10% of the home price here. If it was $41,000, they'd be saving 10% of their total home cost. They're looking at a 410 price range. They're seeing $55,000. That's a lot of savings. But not only that, it's 3 years and 4 months sooner. At the top of the screen, you can see how much sooner they'd be paying their loan off. Now, the tactic for using this, of course, is once you wow them with that number, 55,000, now you can play with the slider and say, hey, so could you put more down? Could you put could you pay an extra $150 each month? go out 2 less times a month. Now we're talking 77,000, almost 5 years they're cutting off their loan. This is just a good conversation for us to have with that buyer. But again, the tactic that I wanted to impart on you guys at that closing table, you are maybe that buyer's signing their paperwork and you're trying to do something cool for them. Create this, run this scenario, press that share icon, send full report, and this is a great printout to give to that new buyer. It's the cherry on top. Hey, it's been a pleasure working with you. I just wanted to let you know, if you put an extra $100 a month towards your mortgage payment each month, it'll pay towards principal, and you're going to save about $55,000. You're going to shave 3 years and 4 months off of your full 30-year term length. It's just something I wanted to leave with you, have you think about. Congratulations on buying the home. I'm so excited for you guys. Again, it's been truly a pleasure working with you. This is that cherry on top. If we're giving a good experience to our buyer, this is that last piece of, hey, it's been a pleasure working with you. I just wanted to leave you with this as well. Just let you know, here's my gift to you, another cool way that you can get some savings in this purchase. So such a good piece here for you to use. Again, I would recommend after closing, maybe it's a cool way for you to follow back up with them and check on them. Some of you guys leave your clients surveys and other things. This is a great piece to follow back up with them, maybe a week after they closed, and you're just stopping by to check on them and all that. Just a really cool way to put the bow on top. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back. I want to jump over to premium. Now, there's a lot of different calculators in here. Again, I urge you guys to join us for a next advance call and, follow up with our support team or your rep and try to get access to those recordings of previous ones. But I want to switch gears now and I want to jump into the premium. That's another thing that we do traditionally with these advanced calls is I talk about the most relevant things that we've highlighted for the month, some of the most relevant calculations and infographics that we've loaded in here. And so I want to point out some really cool stuff for you. First, if you have not checked out the content being highlighted in our monthly marketing package, if you don't see the pop-up already, you can press on that featured card, but I want to show you that January monthly marketing package. We've got some really cool pieces of content here. We, in fact, highlighted some new calculations. We built some brand new calculations for this month's marketing package. The first one is the price drop versus the seller buy down. Now, I know it says price drop, it says seller buy down. You would think this is a seller piece, but really, this is a piece for those buyers, you guys. It's a piece that lets you show, instead of asking for a reduction, the house is listed at $515,000, maybe that buyer's trying to get you to submit an offer for $500,000. This is a way for you to have that conversation with that buyer and say, hey, instead of offering $500,000 on that $515,000, what if we offer them the $515,000 that they want, but we ask for a $15,000 concession, and then we use that for a 2-to-1 buy down? That's a really powerful way to boost those savings. I like to say, instead of getting that $15,000 discount spread over the full 30 years, and you're not even going to live in the house for 30 years, why don't we get that $15,000 discount in the first 2 years of the loan with the 2-to-1 buy down? Ask for that discount as a concession and then use it for one of these temporary buy downs and get yourself some massive savings in the first couple of years. In fact, here's how the numbers look. Now, we've got an example scenario. These are tied to our calculator, so you can adjust the numbers to have an example scenario that really resonates with your clientele. But in this example scenario, what price point was it? Okay, it was a $450 price point. Asking for, $10,000, whatever the concession amount here in a reduction, so a $10,000 reduction is going to save us about $95 a month. As opposed to, offering what they want and using that $10,000 for a 2-to-1 buy down in the first year, you're saving $612 a month. That's a number that's actually going to resonate with a buyer. that's savings that they can actually feel. And so this is a really cool piece to use on a buyer to show them, hey, you're trying to ask, submit an offer on this home that's a little bit lower. It might be disrespectful. They might not even consider it, but it's also maybe not the best way to maximize your savings. Here's a printout that shows you, instead of offering, 10, 15,000 less and submitting an offer like that, why don't we offer them what they want, ask for that concession, use that concession for a 2-to-1 buy down. Here's how the savings look. So really, really, really cool piece for you to use with a potential buyer. And again, with these pieces, you can open it up. I'll click on it and it's going to open up that piece in my premium section here. And I press continue and I can plug in a price point that works for my audience. Instead of having that $485 price range, I'm working with a client that's trying to buy a house in that $410 price range. Let's see what this scenario looks like at $410. Again, it's a $9,300 concession that needs to be had for a 2-to-1 buy down. And so, do we offer 10,000 less, save ourselves $50 a month, or do we offer them the 410 that they want, ask for that $10,000 concession, use that for a 2-to-1 buy down, and now our buyer is saving, $463 a month that first year. That's a lot of savings. So a lot of useful ways for this piece here. Definitely a really cool piece that we highlighted in the monthly marketing package. Now, we also highlighted a piece that talks about renting and waiting for rates to drop. And this piece is so powerful, you guys. In fact, on the full printout, the 8.5 by 11 printout, in fact, I'll X out of my pop-up here and I'll go ahead and point that piece out. This one right here, if I open this one up, this has got a really cool added piece here. Down here at the bottom, it gives us a timeline. And let me first explain what this piece shows us. It shows us how waiting just 1 year for rates to drop, how waiting that 1 year affects us. If we think about equity stance and appreciation that we're missing and the money that we're throwing away renting, all of that, how much is that 1 year of waiting for lower rates actually affecting us? In this example scenario that we show on here, waiting 1 year, it affects you, it puts you back 8.8 years, you guys. That's how bad, how detrimental waiting just 1 year for rates to drop, how much it's affecting your equity stance. And so a really cool piece. Now, the timeline, the years to break even isn't included in our story size and our post size. It was just too much information to put on one page. But this printout, this 8.5 by 11 printout version has that years to break even section that I absolutely love. This is such a powerful piece to use on that buyer, that renter who's thinking about waiting for lower rates. I'm going to re-sign my lease. I'll wait. Rates aren't right where I want them. I'm going to lease rent for a little bit longer. And then, when I get out of my lease, rates will be better. I'll buy then. How much damage could it do? Waiting just 1 year. This printout lets you show them how much waiting 1 year really affects them. So I absolutely love this. I urge you to try it out. Definitely a cool piece here. And then the final piece that we highlighted in the monthly marketing package, of course, with it being January, a 2026 outlook. What are the experts saying is coming of 2026? We've got a really cool piece here. It's actually a swipeable graphic. So there's multiple pieces. In fact, I'll open it up and I'll show you. When it opens up, I actually think, there it is. All right, so when I open it up, it's going to be multiple pieces. It's actually 3 pieces in the top right corner. You can see there's 3 pieces to this set, but you can swipe through, what are the appreciation projections? What are the interest rate projections? You can post this to your social media, use it as a story, and use it as a green screen and talk about some of the stuff behind you. Really cool piece here for you guys to stay in front of your clients and talk about 2026. It's the first month of 2026. What do we expect for the other 11 months? This is a really cool piece that uses expert predictions to help you educate your followers. And of course, if you don't know about it, in the top right corner, all of our pieces of content come with suggested captions and hashtags. So I can open open that up, there's a caption and hashtag set that I can copy and include in my post. And so definitely a really cool piece here. A quick post for you for your Instagram, or Facebook. You can make a quick Instagram carousel post really quickly. Okay, we've got a question on where we pull this data from. I'll actually talk with the team. Let me see if Chris, can you note that I want to put a source on this piece? We usually pull from a variety of different sources. I can tell you that a lot of times the data comes from Altos, but I'll make sure that they go in there and plug in the source on this, because that is something that we include on most of our pieces. Susan asked that. Thank you, Susan. I know this was just to hosts and panelists, but appreciate that question. All right, so those pieces highlighted in the monthly marketing package, very relevant, but this month we've actually loaded in pieces outside of our monthly marketing package that have been extremely relevant. Like I mentioned earlier, rates came down, on January 7th or 8th, I believe they dipped below 6%, and that's big news for us. A lot of these buyers are waiting for a 5.5 rate, I think is what a lot of the experts are projecting and predicting, that some of these buyers who are locked in with that low rate, what they're waiting for. But it was really interesting to see it dip below 5, because you saw a spike in mortgage applications. Obviously, rate and how low the rate can go is tied to buyer interest and buyer activity. And so, like I said before, we need to get our buyers buying now before there's more competition when rates dip even lower. But to have that conversation with them about where rates are right now, this first piece that we have highlighted here, it talks about where rates were a year ago and where they are today. And so I'll go ahead and open that up. The example scenario actually has the date that we have, but you can see a year ago rates were 7.25. So a monthly payment on a $450,000 home a year ago would have been about $41.35. That same home price, at least a $450,000 home price, with where rates were when they dipped below 6%, that was $3,900 a month instead. So they're saving, almost $250 a month compared to where rates were this same time last year. And this is a really important thing for us to have a conversation with our buyers about, because some of those buyers that were trying to buy in January of last year, they re-signed a lease, they were thinking about waiting, and they've gotten to that point right now where we need to show them, hey, the last time you were looking, the affordability situation is a lot better for you. And it could get even better in the coming months if rates come down even lower. But I don't know if you had the chance to look at it yet. Here's that home price that you were looking at last year, how much the monthly payment would have been. Here's how much that monthly payment would be today, where rates are today. And this is a very relevant conversation for us to have with our buyers, to post on social media about, because, a lot of the buyers hear that rates are fluctuating a little bit and they've come down some. The dollar amount's what they care about. How does that affect my monthly payment and my buying power and all that? So this is a really relevant piece here. And again, this is just the example thumbnail. When you open the piece up, it'll actually have an updated rate based on today. But, this is such a relevant piece for you guys to use. And again, it's tied to our calculator. So if we open it up, we press continue, it's going to take us into the calculator that corresponds with this. We can plug in, a different price point, a different rate from a year ago. We can plug in what we need to make this work for the client that we're talking with. So definitely a really cool piece there. And then one final piece I want to talk about here before I open it up to any questions that you guys have. There is a piece that is really, really popular. It's been popular. We made this a couple of months ago, and we actually have our developers right now adjusting it to show 2025 because it stopped it at 2024 when we made it. But let me show you something. So I'm going to press see all on my infographics, and I'm going to scroll down, And again, the developers are uploading this right now, so I'm going to pull an older version that says 2024 is the max. But again, we've got this updated instead to show 1951 through 2025. And this version that I'm showing you right now, it shows 1950 to 2024. But again, you guys, still a relevant piece here. Watch for your app when we throw the update in here. This is showing appreciation percentages over the last 75 years. And it's such an important conversation for us to have with our buyers. You know, a lot of buyers, they're worried about appreciation. They don't realize how safe of an investment real estate really is. This is a way for us to take a step back, look at the last 75 years and see that only a few of those years have been red. You know, in times where we had a really bad economical distraught, you know, that's when, you know, home prices actually decreased. Otherwise, it's all green, you guys. You know, and of course, the 2025 number, we've added it on there. I got to look at it earlier. It is low. It's like 1 point something was the average appreciation over 2025. So it was still low. It was low, but it's still green. And it's, again, just an important thing for us to be talking about with our buyers. Some of these buyers, they get a little scared. They get a little hesitant. They worry about depreciation, the risk of depreciation. Look at this graph that shows how unlikely depreciation is on your home. Molly asked if this if is 2025 not included because it was a poor year. No, this is going to be updated. The reason we didn't have 2025 is because we actually released this last year and the 2025 year amount wasn't available yet. And so now we're actually loading the 2025 one on there and removing that 1950. Again, that should be updated here. You know, it might go live here in the next couple of minutes. I've already got the developers loaded or working on loading that in right now. So at worst, it'd be live tomorrow. Okay, Susan's asking how we can get to this piece again. So, all right, in our premium section, so you go to your premium tab, and this is going to be in infographics. So on the right side of your screen, you'll see a see all button on each of the categories. So I'm pressing that see all on the infographics category. And now that's going to show all of them here. It's a little deeper down, so you can scroll down, and it's the first one that's black. But a really cool thing that you guys should know about, if you don't know already, is you can actually search up here at the top. And so this piece is called historical rates. I'll just type in historical and search for that, and boom, that's how you can find it. So it's going to be in infographics, but you can just search historical. In fact, on your premium home screen, we do have a search in that top left corner. You could just type in historical there and find that piece. Again, I don't urge you to use it yet until we update it. Again, we're updating that today. Team is updating it right now, but such a relevant piece. You know, it's really wild for buyers to just get a look, a quick glimpse at it and say, oh, wow, you're right. Homes do almost always appreciate. So definitely a cool piece there. All right, so that is our advanced call for January. Real quick, I want to open it up, see if there's any questions in the chat that I haven't gotten to. Oh, okay. So it looks like Molly is asking if there was one post to make on LinkedIn that you would choose as impactful for today and the future market, which one would you select? There's always information for LinkedIn, but just asking. LinkedIn's an interesting platform to ask about because it's more business forward. And, a lot of times when buyers or sellers are looking you guys up, the agents on LinkedIn, they're usually just looking you up to kind of get a feel for you. see what types of posts you're making. And so I would actually post some of this educational material. One that I think is really, really beneficial is waiting for a lower rate worth it? This is such a powerful piece. Like I said earlier, we've got a lot of these buyers who are thinking about waiting, hoping for a lower rate. But they don't really know how much that lower rate is actually affecting their, monthly cost. And this is a really powerful piece for you to post. One, I think it's really great for LinkedIn specifically because it poses a question. It's nice and clean, but it also poses a question that gets people intrigued, and they're then going to dive into the chart there. But it's a really cool piece here. Again, if we've got buyers who are thinking about waiting for those incremental rate drops from the Fed, or, they're expecting rates to come down, and reach 6 again in March or in June. This is a really cool way for you to show, hey, that 1/8 of a point rate drop that you're waiting for, it's going to save you $40 on this $550,000 home, and then that opens up the door for you to have a conversation about getting a seller concession in today's market, and then buying the rate down yourself 1/8 of a point or 1/4 of a point. And so I think that this is a really cool piece to post to Instagram if I were to choose one. I don't know if I would recommend the caption specifically for LinkedIn. It's a good caption, don't get me wrong, but I think when you guys posted to LinkedIn specifically, you could put more emphasis on the CTA, the call to action. Here we do say, if you want to compare a few scenarios, I'm happy to walk through them with you. I would urge you guys, if you are posting this on LinkedIn, to go deeper into that call to action and ask them to reach out to you or connect to you. Awesome. Molly's going to send in something to our support team. In fact, if the rest of you don't know about our support team, it's a very valuable resource to you. support@PalmAgent.com. I have our chat team putting that in the chat section right now. They'll also put the phone number in as well. I believe I'm going to try to say it, but he's going to put it in there as well. But I think it's 757-281-1287. I'm pretty sure, but he'll put that in the chat section. It's just an important resource that I want you guys to know we have available to you. If you ever have anything wrong with your app, reach out to us and let us know. We've got a full-time support team here, always working hard to address any issues. So if you have questions about anything, or you think something's not functioning correctly, let us know. We're quick to hop on that. Again, support@PalmAgent.com or 757-271-1287. Okay, Heidi asked about the infographics being updated. Absolutely. We are going through, that's one thing our team is working on. It happens at the beginning of each year where we have to go through, weed a lot of the content out. Some of it that's still really relevant, we will update the dates on it to be more relevant as well. That's always something that happens. I will say that sometimes the data lags a little bit behind. For example, there's not data about January yet because January hasn't completed yet. And so some of that is a little nuanced, but absolutely we're going through and updating all the information. Yes, Alfred, PalmAgent and Lawyer's Agent are one and the same. That is one of the title operations that we've partnered with. You can reach out to our support team to see all the partners that we have versions of the app for. Scroll up for me, Chris. Are there any things that I missed in here? Absolutely. So Alfred asked if this webinar is going to be recorded. Absolutely it is. Make sure that you watch for an email from us, support@palmagent.com. We send the recording out to any attendees. Okay. Kristen, great question here. I'm having trouble sharing infographics on Instagram or Facebook with multiple graphics. Is there a trick to that? All right. Absolutely. I'll actually walk through it with you guys. So with the swipeable infographics, so that's the second category in premium here. These are multi-piece image sets. So like the 2026 real estate outlook piece, it was 3 pieces. So in the top right corner, we can see this set has 3 pieces. Well, with Facebook and Instagram and, LinkedIn, I believe as well, all of those platforms are designed to let you, take a picture from one app to their app, to Instagram or Facebook. But when it comes to multiple images, that's where it gets a little muddy. And so the process that we have in here for uploading these sets is if you press share, it's going to ask you where you want to share it to. I'll just choose Facebook. Then it's going to ask me if I want to share just the one image or share the entire set. If I choose the share only this image, it's going to use the normal, posting to Facebook flow that we're all familiar with. It opens up that little pop-up with Facebook, and then it lets us, type out our post and such. When it comes to sharing multiple images, there's not really a way to do that to Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn for that matter. And so if I choose share image set, it's actually going to save those 3 images to my camera roll. And then I can open up Facebook or Instagram and create a post with those images. And so that is the flow for, in fact, we can open up my photos here. This is a work iPad. So, but you'll find those, what? It looks like we do have an issue here. Can you note that for me? The share image set, it didn't save the images to my camera roll. Thank you for bringing that up. We've got our team on that and they'll address that. And there should be a pop-up that opens up one of the platforms, whichever you selected. Okay, Denise asked for, the true value analysis calculator. Since we've got 8 more minutes before the hour is up, I believe we only scheduled these for 45 minutes, but we still have 8 minutes before the hour, and I got another call I got to hop on. And so I will go through the true value analysis, you guys, because I think it's the most relevant tool if you've got a meeting with a seller. Because what we're seeing across the nation, these sellers, they're still a little unrealistic. They still, I love to say they still think it's 2022 and their house appreciated 20% over the last year. And so when we're going into these listing appointments, we're having to fight that seller on what we list the house at. They're way up here. I think market value, we should be listing it more here to get it sold fast. But it's a difficult conversation these days going into that pricing conversation with our sellers. And this true value analysis calculator is designed to really change that and show that you're the expert in that conversation. And we call it our new net sheet because it still lets you run a net sheet, the famous net sheet that everybody loves our app for, but it puts a nice little spin on it. It actually lets you run 3 net sheets at once. In fact, let's open it up and take a look. So I'll open up true value analysis. So it starts off with that 3-tiered pricing strategy. What do we think we should price the house at? I've looked at the comps. I think the house is worth 5.25. That's what I'm going to put in here is market value, the market price. I'm the realtor here. I think that we should list it at 5.25. Well, the other option here that we have is pricing it low. And this is a tactic that some of you guys use. Price it low, get a bidding war going, have it fly off the market. And so this is a way for us to say to that seller, hey, I think we should list it at 5.25, but realistically, if we price this thing at 500, we could get some serious buyer attention. There's not another house in this neighborhood listed for that low. I think everybody will show up to the open house at that price. We might get a bidding war going, but at very least, it'll fly right off the market in a month. And so let's just look at that $500,000 price tag and what that does to our sale here. And then of course our seller, they're on the other side of the spectrum. They want to list it at 550. They don't care how long it takes. I don't care if it takes 6 months. I want to sell my house for 550. And so we plug in that high-end 550 scenario as well. And so I've got those 3 prices there. Now, this is one of our seller calculators. And so if you don't know what HomeLink is, in the top left corner, you can actually add an address and it'll pull information for you from county records. So I'll plug in an address here in Texas. and watch what it does. So HomeLink on this seller calculator, first, it's going to pull the tax record for me. Boom. That's what the homeowner paid in taxes last year. Great. I'll use that. But also HomeLink is going to search for an open loan. Here I can see that a loan was originated in February of 2021 for this home. If I plug in the interest rate, it'll tell me how much they still owe on that mortgage. And if by chance I don't know what interest rate they got, here's the average interest rate for the year that loan was originated. So I'll go ahead and use that glorious sub 3. I'll even leave it on the screen for a second because I know we're all wishing it comes back, right? We all want that sub 3 to come back. So I'll plug in that 2.9. I'll hit compute. Here's how much that homeowner still owes if they've been regular on their payments. $380,000 is that loan balance of that homeowner. Such a powerful thing for us to be able to access so quickly just by adding their address. Now I'll use that. So I'll press use estimate and it loads the loan balance and the taxes into my input screen here. Now, the last piece of this calculator, which is really important, it goes hand in hand with our holding cost calculator, which I urge you guys to check out, but the holding costs of pricing that home too high. If we price it at $550 where you want to price it, Mr. Seller, it could sit on the market for a little bit longer. I need you to realistically understand what that means. And so let's plug in some of those costs that you're paying while that house is sitting, just so you can get a look at what this means for you. So each month that the house sits, you're still paying the HOA. I know the house that you're looking at, it doesn't have HOA, so you're paying HOA, you're paying the electricity bill, especially if they bought their second house already, they're paying a lot of these things and they're not thinking about it. The gas bill, the internet bill, we really want to go in here and plug in all the costs that they're paying as that house sits, even down to pool. I like saying, hey, you're still showing this house. You still got the pool boy coming out. You still got the lawn team coming out there. We want to put all these things in because they're still paying these as they try to sell the house. And so I plug all those in, I hit compute. And True Value Analysis is going to give us our 3-tiered pricing strategy, something that we can lean on in this conversation with our seller and say, hey, look, I've got the low end scenario. If we price it at $500,000, it could fly off the market, take just a month to close. The market value I suggested, 5.25, it could take 2 months, still a quick amount of time, 60 days getting the house sold. That's still good. And then, if we price that thing at $550, it could take us longer to sell. In fact, if it takes us 6 months, here's the holding cost. That's about $18,000, as opposed to the 2 months, it only being about $6,000, as opposed to the low end scenario where it flies right off the market. Those holding costs, it's really only $3,000 that's coming out of your pocket while you're waiting for that home to sell. And so it shows us the final net of all 3 pricing strategies. The holding cost is on the input screen. It'll be down there, holding costs. It'll be a section of the input screen to Carla there. But this is what's really cool about our True Value Analysis calculator, you guys. If we do price this thing at $550 and it sits for 6 months, we're probably going to do a price reduction. So I can flip this toggle for reductions. It throws a reduction section on here. We can press the pluses and minuses on the reductions amount, even the time to close, the months to close. We can adjust those as needed, but look at the adjusted net here. They might be better off listing this on the low end, getting a lot of buyer attention, possibly getting a bidding war, but even if not, they're still walking with $81,000 as opposed to pricing it on the high end. It's sitting for 6 months, giving you a headache. You got to do reductions and you end up walking with just 58. It's a cool way to have this conversation. And I know we only have a minute left, and so I won't go through the rest, but I do want to point out the market stats. It gives you custom or local data here. So it's pulling data based on that address that you plugged in. And then if you press the share icon in the top right corner, we don't have time to go into it today, but I urge you guys to take that TVA report to your pricing conversation. It's a 5-page packet that'll have you looking like an expert in that pricing conversation with the seller. All right, so that is our advance call for January. Thank you guys for joining us. Oh, thank you, Heidi. It's truly been a pleasure. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our support team, support@PalmAgent.com, and make sure you connect with your rep to get, recordings of the previous advanced calls or the basics call if you need it. Awesome. It's great seeing you as well, Tracy. You guys take care. It's been a pleasure. I'm excited for us to kick the year off strong, and hope you guys all do well this month.